A presentation of Truth and Life Institute, Boston, Massachusetts, and Oba, Nigeria. The following is a subsection of the book. Everyone is a Protestant. Written and published by Ifeanyi Chukwujima, scriptural scientist and a servant of God. This subsection's ID is Everyone is a Protestant, Book 18. When the 1,000 years are over, nations would be deceived by Satan. Were nations not so deceived by Satan at the end of the 1,000-year rule of the Catholic Church over the world, that the nations started vying to rule the world and the Church? Did the emerging powers in Europe not fight the Catholic Church for the control of the world, as Revelation chapter 20 prophesied? Did these nations not turn against each other as they fought over who would control the world? Was not the 30-year war in Europe over the control of the world that was made civilized by the Catholic Church's rule over it? Did this fight over who controls the world not lead to imperial powers of Europe recruiting soldiers from their colonies across the world to fight one another in 2 world wars, Revelation 20 verses 7 to 9? Do not be deceived by the second half of Revelation 20 verse 9. That part and Revelation 20 verse 10 are yet to come. That World Wars I and II happened back to back, signifies that more is coming. And as the Second World War was deadlier than the First World War, the very next one could end it all. As always, God continues to warn mankind until suddenly the apocalypse, Luke 17 verses 26 to 37 NIV. Did Revelation 20 verse 8 prophesy that people would be deceived by Satan, or that nations would be deceived by Satan? Why nations, if not for political control and economic supremacy? When the countries of the West look at the Western civilization and see all the wonderful things it has done for the world, God sees the deception of the devil and the wickedness of men that got all nations and all peoples blindly chasing wealth and powers, and creating injustice and imbalance everywhere. Did all the imperial powers in Europe not emerge from the rule of the Catholic Church over the Roman Empire, which included Europe? Was the Roman Catholic Church a European religion, and not the religion of all peoples across the world, starting with the Jews, who were the very first converts to Christianity, the 12 apostles, and the Church at Jerusalem? It was all God's design that the Catholic Church centers in Europe, which is an earshot from Jerusalem and Palestine. Revelation chapter 13 prophesied that both the political government system and human science would emerge through the Church, and that both would go rogue on the Church. Revelation 13 verses 3 to 4 NIV. Human science rose from within the Church, Revelation 13 verse 11 NIV, and politics rose from without the Church, Revelation 13 verse 1 NIV, with human science charting the course for politics and affirming politics, Revelation 13 verses 15 to 17 NIV. Did the modern political alliances not crystallized out of the wars that ensued amongst the political powers that were warring against each other for the control of the world, which they had successfully wrestled away from the Catholic Church? Did Protestantism not pave the way for all these European powers to gain the legitimacy and the firm support they needed from the people, instead of rebuke from the people for parting ways with the Church? Was it not the Gentile church leaders' Protestantism that desensitized the people of Europe to politics' violent tendencies that systematically toppled the monarchies of Europe, which had also borrowed from the Gentile church leaders' abuse of the commoners? If becoming separate from the Catholic Church brought much progress to our lives, are we not better off remaining all separate? Has anyone really posed that question to God and waited for God's answer? We must individually ask God that question before we continue in our Protestantism. God never commanded anything he did not desire to see come to fruition. Therefore, Matthew 23 verses 8 to 12 is not to be taken lightly. Not anymore. The Church must unite as Jesus Christ desires and implored God to grant in John 17 verses 20 to 21. We are all individually and collectively guilty of the sin of Protestantism. We are getting increasingly comfortable with the lives we have all carved for ourselves and our respective communities, surrounding ourselves with all the modern comfort and pleasures. And so, not only are we divided along religious lines, but we are also dropping out of religion altogether. If we're all truly progressing in life, why are calamities and viciousness increasing at unstoppable rate in our societies? Has rogue human science truly convinced us that there is no God, or are we wishing that God is a myth? Has rogue science convinced us that we can structure our lives any way we deem fit and not worry about consequences from God? Is anybody really discouraging us from trusting God and living our lives in accordance with all the commands of God in the Bible? Or are we just hiding behind rogue human science to continue to feed our greed and pride? The church must turn from its many mistakes of the past and embark on a concerted effort to truly educate believers on what God is seeking from each of them, so that believers would start living life by following God's prescribed science in the Bible for accomplishing abundant life and salvation. The church's majestic worships are all magical and continue to remind the world that God is truly supreme. But the church needs to spend most of its time and energy helping strip the souls of believers of the burden of worldly desires that have managed to master us all. We are religious, but none of us has any freedom whatsoever, freedom from demonic possessive spirits that have us wrapped around their fingers. They pull our switches every which way, and we respond at their every call, priests, religious, and lay alike. All human addictive behaviors are spiritual, demonic, possessions of the worst kind. From the opium addiction to sexual addiction, we are all fighting a losing battle. Until the church ramps up spiritual possession. Education over religious pumps and pageantry, more of the priests and religious, who had given up the personal pursuit of worldly materials and ambitions for the service of God's people, would cross over to the other side in their confusion, trying to recapture some of what they had abandoned for a place with Christ in eternity. Those who have made such sacrifices need God's continuing assurances that they had not made their sacrifices in vain. And the church owes it to them. More than 95% of all human beings in the world are afflicted by one demonic possession or another. All this while the churches spend too much time on religious fanfares. The Great Commission is not about teaching people to carry out religious ceremonies, but about truly getting people to walk away from the life of sin, helping them restore their lost humanity, the trinity of their mind, thoughts, and decisions, their spirit and their works, speech, and deeds. See Figure 62 on page 316. It is the recovery of this lost trinity that the Gentile church leaders had failed to focus on. Instead, they started fighting over doctrines. 2 Timothy 2 verse 14 NIV, Philippians 2 verses 14 to 15. Essentially, the Gentile church leaders focused their energies on building a lasting worldwide religious empire, which geared them towards acquiring real properties instead of recovering lost souls for God, one person at a time. By helping the people of the world regain the trinity of their minds, their spirits, and their good works. And this misdirection of purpose by the Gentile church leaders led to Protestantism and the church's loss of control over the people of the world. The church focused on becoming a viable and lasting world empire like the Roman Empire it succeeded, instead of becoming a spiritual empire that feeds and reinforces the spiritual fervor of believers throughout the world. The bickering church leaders who started Protestantism in the common household of God failed to realize that the purity of the souls that were brought back to God far outweigh the glitz and glamour of the religious institution they were building. These church leaders went against everything the Bible preached for church unity and stayed at it for too long, including, "Let us therefore make every effort to do what leads to peace and to mutual edification." 20. Do not destroy the work of God for the sake of food. All food is clean, but it is wrong for a person to eat anything that causes someone else to stumble. 21. It is better not to eat meat or drink wine or to do anything else that will cause your brother or sister to fall. 22. So, whatever you believe about these things, keep between yourself and God. Blessed is the one who does not condemn himself by what he approves. Romans 14, verses 19 to 22 NIV. That these church leaders concentrated their energies for a very long time on fighting over these doctrinal issues without any regard to God's many commands in the Bible for the unity of his household on the earth showed complete disrespect for Christ, even though they continued to use his name. It was clear that on both sides of the controversies, they were all serving their own ambitions and not God's, proving true the following proclamation from the Bible: whoever says, "I know him," but does not do what he commands is a liar, and the truth is not in that person. 1 John 2, verse 4 NIV. That is true for all of them who took sides in the controversies and perpetuated the divisions in the household of God. If today we fail to condemn all the wrongs on both sides of the rift, we are continuing their ills and making Christian unity more difficult to achieve. In every household, peace and unity are more important than being right or wrong. Many of these bickering church leaders were made saints by the church, when in truth, they helped exacerbated Protestantism within the church by their wrong focus on the mission they inherited from the apostles of Christ. They set their eyes on ruling the church kingdom, which God had given to them to take care of, causing many, both inside and outside the church, to question the motives of the church. Instead of bringing all mankind into the united household of God as desired by God and commanded by Christ, Matthew 28, verses 18 to 20, our actions forced people around the world to create more religions with opposing beliefs. Church unity, therefore, must not be limited to attempting to bring all Christians into unity, but must include all-out efforts to fulfill Christ's original commission of Matthew 28, verses 18 to 20. The world did not become more cynical because it wanted to. The world became more cynical because those who were charged with showing the world the examples of Christ through their lives went after their own ambitions and showed the world the wickedness of the devil instead of the light of Christ. Matthew 5:13-16. The bickering church leaders failed to remember that God takes care of his business 24/7, 24 hours, 7 days a week. My Father is always at his work to this very day, and I too am working. John 5, verse 17 NIV. The church, in its entirety, is upheld, directed, managed, renewed, worked, and controlled by God at all time. And I too am working is a revelation to the world that even without showing any outward movement, that Christ, at no moment while he was in the world, ceased to be a part of the divine Trinity, that throughout his stay in the world, he continually worked with God the Father and God the Holy Spirit, hence his 100% humanity and 100% divinity. We must all join hands with the Catholic Pope and those in the other Christian denominations who are truly committed to genuine Christian unity to make that unity happen sooner than later. We are running out of time and so must not continue in our business as usual modes. God's mission of saving souls has never been a business enterprise, although we have been treating it that way. We must all fall to the ground and die to ourselves, to our selfish desires, to give others around us and around the world the opportunity to gain salvation for their souls and experience the abundant life. God has enough in his kingdom on the earth to feed all human beings if we will live and let others live. Any believer in any of the so-called Protestant churches who does not see themselves in the Catholic Church has the wrong vision of heaven because they lack appreciation for the immeasurable sacrifices which the priests and the religious of the church are making, and the souls the church is bringing to God. They are refusing to join with their brothers and sisters in the common household of God on the earth. Whatever reward they envision for themselves in heaven is overblown. Instead of them being gloriously carried to God in heaven, they will make heaven as those barely escaping the fire of hell, because they built on their own foundation instead of building on the foundation of Jesus Christ. 1 Corinthians 3 verses 10 to 15. Any Catholic believer who does not see the glory of God in the worship of the so-called Protestant churches and do not appreciate their efforts in bringing souls to God has the wrong vision of heaven because they do not value their brothers and sisters and do not hunger to join with them in the common household of God on the earth. Whatever rewards they envision for themselves in heaven is overblown. Instead of them being gloriously carried to God in heaven, they will make heaven as one barely escaping the fire of hell because they built on their own foundation instead of building on the foundation of Jesus Christ. 1 Corinthians 3 verses 10 to 15. Below are some statistics and other information about the world wars, which constitute a part of the prophecy of Revelation 20 verses 7 to 9. These wars were only the beginning of what is to come. Disasters will continue to come until the prophecies of Revelation chapter 20 are all fulfilled. Not because God wants it to happen that way, but because God knew that we would create and continue to nourish the conditions that would bring them about. World War I, July 28, 1914 to November 11, 1918, 4 years, 3 months, and 2 weeks. They went up on the breadth of the earth and compassed the camp of the saints about, and the beloved city. Revelation 20 verse 9 KJV. Allied powers 1.2. Military dead, 3. Military wounded, 12, 831, 5,004. Military missing, 121, 0005. Total, 22,477,500 Kia, WA or MIA Central Powers, military dead, 386, 000, military wounded, 388, 000, military missing, 629, 000, total, 16,403,000 Kia, WA or MIA. World War I, World War I or WW1, also known as the First World War, the Great War, or the War to End All Wars, was a global war originating in Europe that lasted from July 28, 1914 to November 11, 1918. More than 70 million military personnel, including 60 million Europeans, were mobilized in one of the largest wars in history. Over 9 million combatants and 7 million civilians died as a result of the war, including the victims of a number of genocides, a casualty rate exacerbated by the belligerents, technological and industrial sophistication, and the tactical stalemate caused by grueling trench warfare. It was one of the deadliest conflicts in history and paved the way for major political changes, including revolutions in many of the nations involved. Unresolved rivalries still extant at the end of the conflict contributed to the start of the Second World War. Only 21 years later, the war drew in all the world's economic great powers assembled in two opposing alliances, the Allies, based on the Triple Entente of the Russian Empire, the French Third Republic, and the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland versus the Central Powers of Germany and Austria-Hungary. Although Italy was a member of the Triple Alliance alongside Germany and Austria-Hungary, it did not join the Central Powers as Austria-Hungary had taken the offensive against the terms of the alliance. These alliances were reorganized and expanded as more nations entered the war: Italy, Japan, and the United States. joined the Allies while the Ottoman Empire and Bulgaria joined the Central Powers. https://en.wikipedia.org/wiki/world_n_war_I #rape_of_b. World War II, September 1st, 1939 to September 2nd, 1945, 6 years and 1 day. They went up on the breadth of the earth and compassed the camp of the saints about, and the beloved city. Revelation 20, verse 9. Allies military dead, over 16,000, civilian dead, over 45,000, total dead, over 61 million, 1937 to 45, Axis military dead, over 8,000, civilian dead, over 4,000, total dead, over 12 million, 1937 to 45. World War II, often abbreviated to World War II or WW2, also known as the Second World War, was a global war that lasted from 1939 to 1945, although related conflicts began earlier. It involved the vast majority of the world's countries, including all of the great powers, eventually forming two opposing military alliances, the Allies and the Axis. It was the most widespread war in history and directly involved more than 100 million people from over 30 countries in a state of total war. The major participants threw their entire economic, industrial, and scientific capabilities behind the war effort. Erasing the distinction between civilian and military resources. World War II was the deadliest conflict in human history, marked by 50 million to 85 million fatalities, most of which were civilians in the Soviet Union and China. It included massacres, the deliberate genocide of the Holocaust, strategic bombing, starvation, disease, and the first use of nuclear weapons. In history, the war in Europe concluded with an invasion of Germany by the Western Allies and the Soviet Union, culminating in the capture of Berlin by Soviet troops, the suicide of Adolf Hitler, and the subsequent German unconditional surrender in May 8, 1945, following the Potsdam Declaration by the Allies on July 26, 1945, and the refusal of Japan to surrender under its terms. The United States dropped atomic bombs on the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki on August 6th and August 9th, respectively, with an invasion of the Japanese archipelago imminent, the possibility of additional atomic bombings, and the Soviet invasion of Manchuria. Japan formally surrendered on September 2nd, 1945. Thus ended the war in Asia, cementing the total victory of the Allies. World War II altered the political alignment and social structure of the world. The United Nations (UN) was established to foster international cooperation and prevent future conflicts. The victorious Great powers. China, France, the Soviet Union, the United Kingdom, and the United States became the permanent members of the United Nations Security Council. The Soviet Union and the United States emerged as rival superpowers, setting the stage for the Cold War, which lasted for the next 46 years. Meanwhile, the influence of European great powers waned, while the decolonization of Africa and Asia began. Most countries whose industry had been damaged moved towards economic recovery, political integration, especially in Europe, emerged as an effort to end pre-war enmities and to create a common identity. https://en.wikipedia.org/wiki/world_war_2 https. Even the many successes of the world powers through the United Nations do not guarantee that another world war would not erupt. If for anything, the United Nations and the increasing use of it by dominant powers to advance their interests in various parts of the world promotes the threat of a war like the world has never seen before and would never see again. Most evangelical Christians continue to look at this impending worldwide war as the apocalyptic war prophesied in the book of Revelation. While this world war that is looming may end it all, the previous two world wars are an integral part of the prophesied apocalypse. There is no event in the world since Adam and Eve that is not covered in the Bible, from minor political skirmishes to world wars. They're all in the Bible. Most prophecy teachers and preachers treat Bible prophesies since Jesus Christ as prophesies that were given just yesterday. The last of the prophecies given in the Bible came from the apostles of Jesus Christ, of whom Apostle John was the last to die, the book of Revelation. The end times started with Christ's proclamation in John 14:30 to his disciples, which is underlined in the following passage. Anyone who loves me will obey my teaching. My Father will love them, and we will come to them and make our home with them. 24 Anyone who does not love me will not obey my teaching. These words you hear are not my own. They belong to the Father who sent me. 25 All this I have spoken while still with you. 26 But the Advocate, the Holy Spirit, whom the Father will send in my name, will teach you all things and will remind you of everything I have said to you. 27 Peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled and do not be afraid. 28 You heard me say, I am going away and I am coming back to you. If you loved me, you would be glad that I am going to the Father, for the Father is greater than I. 29 I have told you now before it happens, so that when it does happen you will believe. 30 I will not say much more to you, for the prince of this world is coming. He has no hold over me. 31 But he comes sought hat the world may learn that I love the Father and do exactly what my Father has commanded me. John 14 verses 23 to 31 NIV. See also, now is the time for judgment on this world. Now the prince of this world will be driven out. John 12 verse 31 NIV and about judgment, because the prince of this world now stands condemned. John 16 verse 11 NIV. It is the prince of this world that condemned Jesus Christ to death on the cross. The old had passed away, and the new was marshaled in. John 14 verse 30. And the new arrived to continue the dirty works of the old. Revelation 13 verses 1 to 10 NIV, with intrigue that deceived the masses. The dragon stood on the shore of the sea, and I saw a beast coming out of the sea. It had 10 horns and 7 heads, with 10 crowns on its horns, and on each head a blasphemous name. To the beast I saw resembled a leopard, but had feet like those of a bear and a mouth like that of a lion. The dragon gave the beast his power and his throne and great authority. 1 of the heads of the beast seemed to have had a fatal wound, but the fatal wound had been healed. The whole world was filled with wonder and followed the beast. For people worshipped the dragon because he had given authority to the beast, and they also worshipped the beast and asked, "Who is like the beast? Who can wage war against it?" 5. The beast was given a mouth to utter proud words and blasphemies, and to exercise its authority for 42 months. 6. It opened its mouth to blaspheme God, and to slander his name and his dwelling place, and those who live in heaven. 7. It was given power to wage war against God's holy people and to conquer them. And it was given authority over every tribe, people, language, and nation. 8. All inhabitants of the earth will worship the beast, all whose names have not been written in the Lamb's book of life, the Lamb who was slain from the creation of the world. 9. Whoever has ears, let them hear. 10. If anyone is to go into captivity they will go. If anyone is to be killed with the sword they will be killed. This calls for patient endurance and faithfulness on the part of God's people. Revelation 13 verses 1 to 10 NV. Who exactly is this beast? See Matthew 27 verses 15 to 26 to find the identity of the first beast of Revelation. Now it was the governor's custom at the festival to release a prisoner chosen by the crowd. 16. At that time they had a well-known prisoner whose name was Jesus Barabbas. 17. So when the crowd had gathered, Pilate asked them, "Which one do you want me to release to you, Jesus Barabbas or Jesus who is called the Messiah?" 18. For he knew it was out of self-interest that they had handed Jesus over to him. 19. While Pilate was sitting on the judge's seat, his wife sent him this message: "Don't have anything to do with that innocent man, for I have suffered a great deal today in a dream because of him." 20. But the chief priests and the elders persuaded the crowd to ask for Barabbas and to have Jesus executed. 21. Which of the two do you want me to release to you? Asked the governor. Barabbas, they answered. Point 22. What shall I do, then, with Jesus who is called the Messiah? Pilate asked. They all answered, "Crucify him." 23. Why? What crime has he committed? Asked Pilate. But they shouted all the louder, "Crucify him." 24. When Pilate saw that he was getting nowhere, but that instead an uproar was starting, he took water and washed his hands in front of the crowd. "I am innocent of this man's blood," he said. "It is your responsibility." 25. All the people answered, "His blood is on us and on our children." 26. Then he released Barabbas to them. But he had Jesus flogged and handed him over to be crucified. Matthew 27 verses 15 to 26 NIV. The collective will of the people is the prince of this world who unjustly sent Jesus Christ to his death on the cross and continues to this day to turn the world upside down, because the collective will of the people is nobody, and so has no soul, but only rage and vengeance in the name of justice. Matthew 27 verse 25 NIV.